A woman in Arizona received a blood test result telling her that she might have cancer. And days later, the result was reversed. No explanation, no apology. The test came from a $9 billion company backed by generals, senators, and former secretaries of state. The machine that produced it didn't work. It never had. And by the time anyone admitted that, the damage was already done. This is the story of Theranos. Not a failure of technology, but a failure of authority. The strange part wasn't that the machine failed. Machines fail all the time. The strange part was that no one was allowed to question it. For years, Theranos didn't survive because its technology worked. It survived because the right people believed it did. And belief, when it wears a uniform and a tie roll, can be more powerful than a proof. Elizabeth Holmes didn't build credibility the usual way. She didn't publish data or invite independent testing. Instead, she built credibility socially. By her mid-20s, Holmes had assembled one of the most powerful boards in Silicon Valley. Former Secretaries of State, retired 4-star generals, people who managed wars and advised presidents. None of them were experts in the blood diagnostics, and it was all part of the strategy. Theranos wasn't selling device to scientists, it was selling certainty to authority. And when someone walked into a room and saw names like Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, the question was no longer, does this work? It became, who am I to doubt? People evaluate claims through social contexts. If powerful institutions accept something, others assume that the difficult part has already been done. And so, the chain of reaction began. Investors assumed regulators had checked, regulators assumed scientists have verified, and the scientists assumed the data existed somewhere else. No one wanted to be the first to say the obvious thing out loud. Inside Theranos, questioning the technology was framed as disloyalty. Employees who raised concern were isolated, some were fired and threatened with lawsuits. The message was consistent. The company was too important to slow down for doubt. And for years, the strategy worked. Pharmacies partnered with Theranos without seeing validation data. Even Walgreens put Theranos blood testing centers inside their branches, trusting that someone, somewhere, had verified the science, but that someone did not exist. Holmes spoke the language of inevitability. She didn't say the technology was ready. She said it was revolutionary. And she claimed that it would change healthcare. By the time doubts started to surface internally, the company had grown too large to fail quietly. Too many reputations were attached, and so the story continued. But belief can only carry the lie so far. Eventually, the story collides with reality. Theranos promised a machine called Edison. The pitch was simple and irresistible. One drop of blood, hundreds of tests, instant results. No needles and no waiting. It sounded like a revolution in medicine. The problem was, blood doesn't behave like a software. A drop of blood isn't clean data. It degrades, it reacts, it changes the moment it leaves the body. And that's why real labs use multiple vials, repeated testings, and redundancy. Theranos tried to skip all that. Inside the company, engineers struggled to make the Edison work. Results varied widely, and the same blood sample could produce different outcomes minutes apart. So Theranos did something quietly and dishonest. When the Edison couldn't perform a test, the blood sample was diluted and sent to other lab machines made by other companies, like Siemens machines, the same system that Theranos claimed to be replacing. Patients were told that the future had arrived, but in reality, they were getting yesterday's technology. Many of the results were distorted and diluted. Healthy people were flagged for serious conditions, while sick people were told everything looked normal. This wasn't innovation, it was a Russian roulette. Most outsiders didn't spot the fraud because they never saw the machines up close, but employees did. Young scientists joined Theranos, believing they were building something historic. Instead, they found a workplace designed around isolation. Teams were separated, and engineers working on one part of the system were discouraged from asking about the rest. When tests failed, explanations were discouraged. One former employee later on recalled being warned that asking the wrong questions could end a career. Another described watching data being adjusted before being sent upstairs, not to improve accuracy, but to avoid uncomfortable conversations. The optimism was real, and so was the fear. Eventually, a small number of employees reached the same conclusion. Staying silent felt worse than speaking up. They didn't go public or contact regulators. They tried something safer. They spoke to a reporter. John Carrero didn't arrive with an expose in mind. He started with routine questions. He asked to see independent validation data, whether outside experts had reviewed the technology. The answers never arrived. Instead, Carrero received letters from Theranos lawyers. The company warned him about publishing false information and accused unnamed sources of misunderstanding innovation. Companies with evidence usually share it. Companies without it usually explain why sharing it is impossible. Former employees even admitted that machines failed regularly. Doctors described patients returning with conflicting results. And when Carrero pressed again for peer-reviewed studies, Theranos could not provide a single one. And that was the moment where the image started cracking. And once it cracked, it collapsed quickly. Walgreens was the tipping point. Walgreens is one of the largest pharmacy chains in the US, operating nearly 9,000 locations and serving millions of customers every day. The scale is exactly why Theranos wanted this partnership. The plan was simple and obvious. Theranos machines would be placed inside Walgreens stores nationwide, allowing customers to walk in, give a finger prick of blood, and receive faster and cheaper test results than traditional labs. No doctor referral or hospital visit is required. For Walgreens, it looked like the future of retail healthcare. For Theranos, it provided instant legitimacy. When blood tests happen inside a familiar pharmacy, people don't question the science behind them. They assume someone already has, and that assumption proved costly. As the machines rolled out, Walgreens began receiving complaints. Patients reported inconsistent results. Some were told they had serious issues, only to be cleared days later by conventional labs. Others were falsely reassured. Walgreens launched an internal review and requested what Theranos had avoided for years: proof. Theranos could not demonstrate that its technology worked reliably. In many cases, test results were generated using traditional lab equipment and not the Theranos machine itself. Walgreens ended the partnership, and once a national healthcare partner stepped away, the illusion became impossible to maintain. Federal inspections proved what insiders known for years. Quality control was inconsistent, testing procedures were improvised, and machines that were being used on real patients had never been validated. It was a basic violation of how medical testing was supposed to work. Theranos was banned from operating blood test laboratories, and Elizabeth Holmes stepped down as CEO shortly afterwards. Within weeks, the company's valuation collapsed from billions to zero. Boards resigned, endorsement disappeared, public praise quietly stopped. No one wanted to explain how long warning signs had been ignored. The story then shifted from innovation to accountability, and then it moved to court. The trial was mostly about Elizabeth Holmes and whether she knowingly lied to people. Prosecutors focused on intent. They showed emails and internal messages that acknowledged technical failures, while investors were being told the opposite. They presented evidence that test results were selectively reported and demonstrations were staged. Employees also testified that concerns were dismissed or punished. The defense argued that Holmes genuinely believed that the technology would change the world and that optimism and ambition should not be considered fraud, but the jury disagreed. In 2022, Holmes was convicted with fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud, and in 2023, she was sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison. She's currently serving that sentence at a maximum security facility in Texas. Theranos, meanwhile, no longer exists. The company was dissolved in 2018. There was no rebrand or new management. The patents were sold and the offices were emptied. Theranos didn't fail quietly, it failed publicly, and in a way that exposed modern systems and how much trust they are willing to extend without proofs. The damage wasn't theoretical. Patients received false diagnoses. Some believed they were sick when they weren't, and others believed they were healthy when they weren't. Trust in medical testing was shaken, and once trust is broken in the medical healthcare, it doesn't come back easily. Theranos' story was about authority without verification, about what happens when titles replace testing, and when confidence replaces evidence. The machine didn't fail the system failed itself. Because no matter how impressive the boardroom looks, blood still obeys biology. This is the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have more ideas for me to cover in the next episodes, leave it in the comments. Until next time.